My name is Ryan, I'm an artist, and this is the full process of how I digitally paint portraits. This is a portrait I did yesterday. If you want to know everything I do to create something like this, then try to hang out till the end. The first thing I do in all my paintings is create a messy background. I do this for a couple reasons. One, it's fun to do, and it's a quick way to loosen myself up. Two, it provides a much more interesting background. I personally love when art looks like it has a human touch to it, and in digital paintings, it's far too easy to make something look like it's overly polished and clean. To me, that overly perfect look can make paintings look really rigid and sterile. I mean, we live in a time where photography exists. I don't need to paint something that's exactly perfect. I'd rather lean into imperfections and create messy marks. So creating messy backgrounds is my first step in maintaining that human touch. I kind of think of doing this as like treating a canvas. This is my underpainting, and whatever colors I put here tones the rest of the painting going forward, even if I end up painting over the entire background. Sticking with this idea of treating my digital paintings like physical paintings, I try to use very minimal layers. For the majority of my digital paintings, I have 3 layers in total. The first I use for the background, the second I use for painting my subjects, and the third is used for adding those final details and touches at the end. To start painting my subject, I begin by painting a silhouette. I usually try to pick a color for this that contrasts with the background, whether that contrast is in value or color or both. I try to match the silhouette as close as I can to the reference photo. As I shape the silhouette, I don't use the eraser tool. Instead, I color pick from the background and paint over the areas that need adjustments. I switch between using the background color and the silhouette color over and over again until I feel like the silhouette looks like my reference. And then, once I'm satisfied with the silhouette, I begin painting in the larger color shapes. As I block in more colors, the painting starts to take shape and I readjust the silhouette as I go. After adding the colors, I did feel like there wasn't enough contrast between the background and the subject, so I repainted the background so that it was a lighter color. Just a quick note, I don't repaint backgrounds on the background layer. I know that's kind of weird. I could go repaint the background layer, or I could use color sliders to get the exact color that I want, but I found that that's just not as interesting. Repainting the background this way and having to be careful about where I put the strokes around my subject usually gives me better results and, again, leans into the imperfections and having a human touch. And now that the colors are looking good, I begin adding in the darker values, the large shadow shapes that give a subject form. As I'm putting in the values, I continue refining the painting more and more. I try to think of the shadow shapes and the color blocks as a map. These are the big shapes, and if I can get the relationships with these looking good, then I can trust them when it's time to start putting in the smaller shapes. This is a concept that I continually come back to. General to specific. Big broad shapes that make up a picture and slowly refining those shapes until an image appears. I don't know if any of you have ever sculpted before, but painting is super similar to sculpture in this way. Starting with a big piece of clay and carving away and adding clay until it becomes the thing that you're trying to make. If we look at the nose, for example, I'm not thinking paint the nose. I'm more thinking paint the bigger shapes around the nose until the nose appears, and then I start painting the smaller shapes within the nose. Thinking of your painting in this way will also make it so much easier when capturing someone's likeness. Because instead of getting so detail-oriented on one part of the face, you're thinking more about the relationships between all the features of the face. You could be really focused on painting this one area of the face, getting it all detailed and pretty, but if it's not in the right spot, you won't notice until you've already put in all this work. At this point in the painting, it becomes more about patience. Jumping around different areas, pushing and pulling, slowly refining the painting. As another way to ensure that the painting is looking accurate, I'll flip the canvas and make any adjustments that I feel need to be made. I usually try to do this before I begin adding in any of the smaller features. Again, as I begin to paint the smaller features, I paint the areas around the features first, always working big to small. Once the smaller features are in, it just becomes about patience again. I continue to flip the canvas, making small adjustments and jumping all over the painting. I will constantly find areas that need to be tweaked. For the most part, I try to paint over or repaint those areas, but in some cases, I will use the lasso tool to make an adjustment. After painting and painting and painting, getting the colors and the values to a place that I'm finally happy with, I begin painting in the smallest features, the freckles, the hair strands, and the highlights. The painting at this stage is basically done. It looks like the reference, all the details are where I want them to be. It's a solid painting, but it doesn't feel like me. This is where the human touch comes into play again. This is also where I make the third layer. I begin drawing over the portrait. A detail that I like to add is tracing over parts of my paintings with red. I think it can help separate the subject from the background a little bit more, but honestly, I just like it. At this stage, I'm basically just having fun. I'm adding scribbles and doodles and blemishes of colors that weren't there before. Some would maybe say that I'm ruining the painting, but when I compare it to what it looked like before, I find this so much more interesting. Without the scribbles, without the blemishes, the painting feels like something that any artist could make. But with these extra notes, I feel like it becomes so much more interesting. It gets all these extra flavors and it feels like mine. After adding those extra flavors, I take one final look at my piece and then compare the subject to my reference. Usually there's a few things that I want to tweak, but I try not to change the painting too much. Here, for example, I felt that the crown of the head was a bit too big, so I shaved some of it off and then resized the piece to better fit the composition. And with those final adjustments, the piece is done. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you liked this video. I hope you got some value out of it. If you did, then please hit the like button. Subscribe if you're new. And if you're looking for some helpful tips on how to get better at drawing people, check this video out right here.